Well, good afternoon. The safety of our children is my top priority. And one thing I will never do is take unnecessary risk when it comes to our children. And that's why, after careful consideration, after consulting with the health experts, it is clear that we cannot open schools at this time. I'm just not going to risk it. This wasn't an easy decision to make, but it was the right decision. We've made the decision to put our kids' safety first, and at the same time, we have a plan to ensure that our children's education can continue outside of the classroom. At-home learning will continue. All students from grades K to 12 will receive their report cards. We're doing everything possible to make sure our students have the opportunity to graduate this year, and we're working hard to ensure that child care centers will begin to open safely once we get to stage 2 of reopening. We'll make sure we support parents returning to their jobs as workplaces are ready to reopen. I also know that many of our kids are eagerly awaiting to find out if they'll be able to go to camp this summer. I know many parents are looking for certainty when it comes to summer plans. So today, we're also providing an update on summer camps. Overnight camps will remain closed. Unfortunately, we just can't have camps with 500 kids living together right now. I know this will be tough for many kids who look forward to their overnight camps. But there's some good news. Based on the best advice of our health experts, as long as trends continue to improve, summer day camps will be allowed to open in July and August with strict, and I repeat, strict public health measures in place. We hope this gives kids and parents something to look forward to this summer. I know it's hard at home right now. I know some parents are juggling work and supporting at-home learning. To our amazing parents, you are true champions. You're going above and beyond. You're putting on a brave face to support and comfort our children during these uncertain times. And I want you to know that your sacrifice, your care, does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. And our government will have your back every step of the way. Most importantly, I want our parents to know that as we move forward, we will keep you informed every step of the way. In every decision we make, my commitment to the parents is this: the health and safety of our kids will always come first. Nothing is more important. Before I pass it over to Minister Lecce, I just want to mention it's Personal Support Worker Day. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, our wonderful personal support workers. Today is about celebrating you and everything you do. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll pass it over to Minister Lecce.
Good afternoon. I know the past months have been tough on our communities, on parents, on educators, and most especially on Ontario students. But know that we are all proud of them, all of them, for rising to the challenge and doing the very best in this extraordinary time. Premier Ford gave me a clear mandate to do whatever it takes to keep students safe. And that is why in this province we closed schools, the first in this country. It is why today, following the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, that public and private schools will remain closed until the end of June. We will act to keep students safe. Nous prendrons des mesures pour veiller à la sécurité des élèves. Our plan is about ensuring students remain safe from COVID-19 and ensure that they remain learning while at home. As students remain home, we've strengthened our Learn at Home program and our expectations. We want to recognize those educators who have stepped up to support students. And I know many parents and some students have also been clear to government that they want to see this type of support being more consistent. It's why we continue to insist on the standardization of live dynamic learning, also known as synchronous learning, to help give your children a sense of community with their educators and their friends. I've also seen firsthand how powerful this interaction can be. In this tough circumstance, we have to give students that sense of community, that face-to-face, real-time experience where teachers interact by voice and video with their students. The opportunity to see their peers, to challenge assumptions, to learn new skills using the best technology available to us. It makes the difference. Now, during this closure period, we've also taken action by leveraging supports and the ingenuity of nonprofits and businesses through the Ontario Together initiative. 34 approved initiatives to enhance support for students, to provide free access to new learning resources, and to deliver reliable internet connectivity. Low-cost, high-impact solutions that have been identified and negotiated to support school boards on their important work. We're also scaling up our summer learning program. Although schools will remain closed for the remainder of the 2019-20 school year, more students than ever before will enjoy greater opportunities to learn and earn valuable credits through our new, robust Ontario Summer Learning Plan. We've identified 7 areas of focus that will provide learning both in class and virtually, and it's on a voluntary basis. We've also enhanced supports in places for vulnerable children, for kids with disabilities, with exceptionalities, mental health challenges, students from the First Nation community, LGBTQ community, and Black students. Support for them so that they can get ahead with the resources they deserve. School boards will be administering the programs, so parents are encouraged to speak with them over the coming weeks to voluntarily sign up. Now, we also recognize that daycare and childcare is vital to our recovery. Following advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, licensed childcare centers and early on programs will also remain closed through the stage 1, the stage we are in today. Emergency childcare will continue for healthcare and for frontline workers during this period. Looking forward, as the Premier noted, we will gradually reopen childcare as part of stage 2 once it is safe to do so. We will reopen childcare with strict health protocols to keep our youngest learners safe. Now, on top of this, our government, led by Minister Smith, will allow the opening of summer day camps so students can enjoy both indoor and outdoor activity. It will require local health approval, and new guidelines will be imposed to ensure their safety. As we look forward to September, I want parents to know that we will be introducing new protocols, new standards to ensure students can return to class safely. We will announce that plan for September's reopening before the end of this school year, following continued guidance by the Chief Medical Officer of Health. I just want to take a moment to thank Sick Kids for also sharing perspective on today's plan, for providing critical guidance on our strategy to safely reopen schools. And if I may, just for a moment, just to students of this province, I know this will feel different, and I know it is not easy on you. But I have every confidence, we have every confidence in you, in your energy, in your determination, and the spirit of this province best embraced by the sons and daughters of Ontario, our next generation. Thank you.
We'll go to the phone line for questions. Just one reminder that it's one question, one follow-up. First question.
First question comes from Chris Rushowy from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. We've been hearing from parents with special needs students who are particularly struggling at this time. They say the government needs to take a leading role in making sure that their children are being served during the school shutdown. Given that it's going to last now until the end of the school year, what is the government doing to help these families and ensuring that school boards are meeting their needs?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll hand this over to the Minister of Education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I absolutely agree with the premise that these families are going to need more support now more than ever to support their children, enable them to learn while they're at home. And we have great concern about these children. We want to make sure all kids with exceptionalities are able to get ahead, get the support they need. So there's a few things we are doing and a few new initiatives we are introducing, especially as we lead into the summer. The first is we've put out an expectation to our boards of education that every single mental health and special education resource that is funded in this province is fully unlocked to support our kids. What that means is that they're for EAs, for psychologists and psychotherapists, for social workers, which there are hundreds across this province, our expectation, and we know in many cases this is the case, that those members are supporting those families. They're providing as much support as humanly possible to offset that challenge for those parents. The second thing we're doing in the summer, as we look forward, is announcing a new program of support for kids with ASD, for children on the autism spectrum. There's a 2-week specialized program that also will be extended to kids with special education and mental health challenges. This program for both, for all those constituencies, is going to help them reacclimatize themselves back to school. It's really focused on behavior and communication. and that 2-week program will be led by health professionals and by professionals within our school board. So it's these types of initiatives to ensure that they are ready to start, successfully able to start school in September, that is a focus, as well as the fact that the government is working very closely with the Minister's Special Advisory Council on Special Education. We're working with the Education Standards Accessibility Committee to ensure that there are higher standards and more standardization of the experience so that all parents in Ontario get the support they deserve.
Follow up?
Yes, thanks. Minister, could you also talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you're considering for when school does eventually reopen? Are you looking at social distancing, temperature checks? In the U.S., some jurisdictions are considering keeping elementary teachers with the same students to provide continuity. What measures are being discussed here in Ontario?
You know, what we are doing is working very closely with the Chief Medical Officer of Health. We've also introduced another opportunity for perspective from the leadership team of Sick Kids to help guide how we reopen schools. It is obvious that schools will not look the same, that we have to reimagine education in some respects in September, given that there will have to be some protocol changes, distancing, you know, even with respect to movement of children for going outside. All these types of considerations are being made as we speak. And as I mentioned earlier, we will unveil the full plan for reopening schools safely by the end of this school year, meaning before the end of June. We will unveil a plan of how that will look, what those types of impacts will be, and additional educational supports we're going to unveil to help our kids succeed next year.
Next question.
Next question comes from Lucas Meyer from News Talk 1010. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for taking our questions once again. Premier, why did you decide to do this for the whole province and not do some sort of project for areas of the province that don't have as serious cases as, for example, a place like Toronto? Why a blank decision for the whole province as opposed to some areas that could have perhaps done some sort of teaching?
So you're talking about education, Lucas?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, you know something, Lucas? I'm just not going to chance it. I'm just not going to chance it when it comes to our kids. We know that people travel all across this province, and in the summer they even travel more. And I understand what you're saying. Some areas don't have any COVID cases, but why chance it for a few weeks? It's just not worth it. And when it comes to our children, I've said many times, I am not going to chance anything.
And as a follow-up, in terms of what this means now moving forward in terms of financial support, I know the minister mentioned earlier today, referenced the $200, the $250, payments that have been made. Is the province now going to commit even further financial supports directly to parents because of this?
Well, right now we've put everything on the table, and we're always open. But as of right now, we're reviewing everything day by day, week by week. So I can't give you a definite no or a definite yes, but I can tell you everything's on the table all the time.
Next question.
Next question comes from Alison Jones from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi, Premier, or perhaps for Minister Lecce. I know Chris was asking about measures that you're looking at for the return of school in September, but before that, if child care centers open up in stage 2, which could be as early as, 2 weeks away if everything goes well, what sort of measures are you looking at for child care centers and also the day camps that could run in the summer? Absolutely.
With respect to day camps, the decision point to reopen them will be made requiring the local health officer's approval, and obviously, as was communicated, that could happen in July and in August. With respect to childcare, we are going to maintain the emergency childcare that is supporting our frontline workers in stage 1. We are going to phase out of that and reopen childcare, at least is the intention, so long as the data continues to move in the right direction. But the idea is we impose very strict guidelines, working with the Deputy Premier, the Minister of Health, and the COVID command table to come up with protocols and make sure that your children, the earliest learners in these centers, remain safe. And those protocols currently include no more than 50 people per center. Every staffer has to be screened. No individual outside of the staff member or the child is able to enter these centers. There is strict screening protocols in place. And obviously, there has to be an outbreak plan supported and approved by the local health officer. That is what exists today. And I can say that overall we're seeing an element of success in keeping the critical mass of these kids safe, and that is so important. And when there have been outbreaks, there have been action taken according to those guidelines. So that's going to inform the decision on the next step. We're working with the health, with the command table on the next step. But I think that is a framework we will be using or looking at using to guide the reopening plan. We're going to give notice to our operators that they can prepare accordingly. But the bottom line is we want to make sure that parents can return to the labor market with confidence that there is a strong, strict safety regime in place that keeps these kids safe.
And for the Premier, does it concern you that on the very day Ontario officially enters stage 1 of reopening, we see a jump in reported new cases?
Well, again, we keep an eye on it day by day, as you know, and so does our health table, and sometimes you see a little bit of peak, but overall, we want to see consistency over a 2-week period of cases going down. But every day is concerning to all of us.
Next question.
Next question comes from Jenny Yen at Toronto Sun. Please go ahead.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Premier. I'll be speaking with a pet store owner who says that a pet spa owner rather, who says that she's lost 70% of her revenues since the closure. And so now that businesses are slowly reopening, small businesses say that the government, they want the government to impose a commercial rent freeze during the recovery period, as she's facing a 30% increase, which she can't handle. Is the province prepared to do something like that?
Well, again, we're waiting for the federal government. It was supposed to be this week. Now I understand it's next week, and that's not a shot against the federal government. They're stepping up to the plate, offering close to $1 billion of subsidy when it comes to rent. As we mentioned, it's up to the landlords and the tenants to work this out. The tenants have to pay 25%, government's paying 50%, and the landlord's paying 25%. Now we'll see how the landlords react. I'm trying to avoid bringing down the hammer on these landlords. I want to make sure people work things out. And I've always said to the landlords, it's better to have someone in there and you're getting 75% rent, 50% covered by the government, than no rent at all. And it's not like they have a lineup of businesses waiting to get into their facility. Plus they have to pay for the upkeep of the building as well. So I think it's a great proposal from the feds and ourselves, actually, to help businesses out.
Follow up?
And this particular small business owner says that her landlord in particular isn't keen on applying for the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, which would help them get rent and also reduce the impact of small business tenants. Yeah. So they're kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. Do you have any sort of suggestions for people that do run these small businesses that are suffering at this stage?
Well, first of all, I want to do everything I can to support the small businesses as we have over the last close to 2 years by giving them a reduction in their overall taxes by 8.75%, reducing WSIB premiums by $1.9 billion, and I could list them all off, but I understand. What can we do right this second? Well, a message to all these landlords, don't force my hand. Don't force my hand, work things out, because I'm trying to compromise here. We're giving you 75% of what you're asking for. And like I said last week, nothing drives me more crazy than greedy landlords taking advantage of people and small business owners that are just trying to keep their head above water. So let's see what happens when the federal government rolls this out next week. Let's see how the landlords react. But again, I'm trying to be fair, but don't push me. These big landlords want to take advantage of small little companies and people that are struggling. I'm going to come down on them like they've never seen before. Cooperate. It's not going to be forever. It's going to be for a few months. Help people out. You have an obligation to do that as a landlord.
Next question.
Next question comes from Mike Crawley at CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi. First question is for Minister Lecce. What are parents supposed to do for daycare in between now and when stage 2 begins and daycares are able to reopen gradually? Because today there's a significant number of people that are going to have gone back to work with the reopening of retail and non-essential construction and all the other things that are opening today. So what's the daycare situation for parents in the meantime?
Yeah, we very much appreciate that question. So families know home-based childcare continues. That does not change, and that is supporting a lot of families that are in the labor market today or will be entering today or in the coming weeks. That continues to exist as a viable option for parents, and obviously we provided some financial support in the immediate term. I think while we recognize that there's some challenges, there are obvious challenges imposed on the workforce because of the health reality of this outbreak. I think what parents have asked us to do overwhelmingly is to get the decision right when it comes to the safety of their daughters and sons. And that is the obligation I think we have. And so while I appreciate full well that this decision, this difficult decision to keep students home while learning with a very robust learning program still creates challenges for parents, it obviously is the only decision forward in the context of maintaining the safety of our families, of our communities, and of mitigating community spread of this disease.
Follow-up?
If I could ask a question to Premier Ford, it's about the independent commission you've announced into long-term care, or that Minister Fullerton announced into long-term care. How can people be certain that this commission is really going to be truly independent, given that the most important independent commission you appointed since you became Premier was the commission into Ontario's finances, and the deficit figure that it came up with of $15 billion was later shown to be completely inaccurate by both the independent auditor general and the independent financial accountability officer. So what's the guarantee that this truly is going to be an independent commission?
I'm not going to get into the weeds with you, Mike, but we had a $15 billion deficit. And what I do want to talk about is the commission. I'm not going to sit here and wait for 3.5 years for an inquiry to give us recommendations. I'm responsible at the end of the day to make sure we get the answers. And we've been fully transparent, absolutely fully transparent when it comes to long-term care and this whole crisis. And we're changing things as we see them come forward every single day on long-term care. Matter of fact, Mike, I was the first premier in this entire country and the first leader that I've seen right across North America, including the United States, to come out with my hand up saying, I want a commission. And I'm not going to wait 2.5 years like the Wettlaufer or SARS that took 3.5 years to get answers while people are dying. We need answers now. And it's going to be fully transparent. Anything I see, Mike, the people are going to see. It's going to be fully transparent, like we've been transparent right from day one of this crisis. We need to make changes, and we're making changes every day. We know a lot of the problems. I've come out here many times and said the system is broken and we need to fix it. But we aren't going to be waiting 2.5, 3 years for someone to tell us things that the commission can tell us. An independent commission that will be fully transparent to the public.
Next question.
Next question comes from Cynthia Mulligan from City News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier.
Hi,
I
Cynthia.
think perhaps the Education Minister might be best to answer these questions. Education Minister, hello.
Hi, Cynthia.
Could you give us a few more details about summer learning? I know it's still a ways off, and I'm sure you want to hear more details from the Chief Medical Officer of Health.
Yeah.
But what could summer learning potentially look like? Do you think that there's any chance that kids will actually be in classrooms?
I appreciate the question. First off, just an earlier question, we were talking about mental health supports. And one thing I just want to make clear for families is we appreciate full well the social-emotional impacts of keeping kids at home. We know this is tough on your children. And so part of this is about something that we felt very strongly is about unveiling a $12 million in supports for mental health in this province announced some weeks ago, much of which is helping our kids with Kids Help Phone and a variety of other critical stakeholders. So we're grateful for that. The other element I just want to mention is that we are going to asking school boards, they'll be able to utilize existing funding from the ministry to hire or maintain the continuity of our mental health supports and spec ed supports throughout the summer to create a bit of a wraparound experience so that these kids get as much help as they can given the circumstance. With respect to July and August for summer school, we are more than doubling the available access to this program. We really want to see more young people participate. It is going to be based on in-class instruction with very strong protocols in place, in addition to a virtual component for those that may not want to go in class or feel comfortable to go in class at this point. But we are creating protocols that can provide confidence to parents with respect to the type of programming we're offering. The emphasis is going to be on credit recovery and credit accumulation for those kids grade 9 to 12. We want them to take courses. If they didn't do well this year, they want to take it again, they can. If they want to take a new course, a new area of expertise or competence they're interested in, they can. And for kids in grade 8, they could reach ahead. They can now take a course, a grade 9 material course, for example, as they prepare for their secondary education. In addition, there is a variety of suite of investments being made to support some of our vulnerable communities, because I think they need to be part of our area of focus. There's kids that were already facing challenges in the education system. They're already in some respects falling behind. And we have to step it up to help these kids. I think of children from vulnerable and marginal communities, racialized children, First Nation, LGBTQ, so many others that need more support, which is why we're putting new investments on the table to help those kids, give them that leadership, that support I think they're going to need in order to get into September with an element of confidence that they can do this.
Follow-up?
Okay, thank you. And my follow-up question to you, Minister, is, you know, it feels like a lifetime ago, but not so long ago, you were in a bitter battle with teachers' unions over class sizes. When school does resume, presumably in September, do you anticipate having to implement lower class sizes, or just having kids come in the mornings and then half of the other school comes in the afternoon? What's on the table? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, as I mentioned earlier about having to reimagine schools, I think fundamentally it includes elements like you've suggested. And, you know, the spacing is going to be critical, and that's going to be driven by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, providing guidance on, you know, how many students ought to be in a class and what the appropriate spacing is, what the appropriate protocols are for them for personal hygiene, what's the mobility within schools, what are they able to access, restrooms, you know, with someone walking them to that space, or, you know, is recreational activities like, you know, gym going to be part of that norm? These are all fair questions, and I know you and others and parents want to know. And what I'm telling you is over the coming weeks, we're going to work very closely with the command table, with the medical and scientific leaders of this country here in Ontario to come up with a solution that enables the greatest level of mobility and educational comfort for these kids while keeping them safe. But we want to see kids return in September, but we want to do that once we have a program in place. And for families out there, you will know the details. You will know the plan for September by the end of June.
Next question.
Next question comes from Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Premier. Can you respond to some criticism about the stage 1 reopening plan, that this benefits people who are more financially flexible, such as if you're able to afford a nanny, you can do that and go back to work, but daycares aren't reopening, for instance. Can you explain why you're allowing nannies, for instance, and not daycares?
Well, again, I'll go back to the minister if you want. There's a big difference between daycares with multiple kids and a nanny taking care of one or two children. And I understand the concerns of some of the small business owners. And if there's any concern at all, they might not be ready to reopen, then don't open. But we're doing everything we can to support them to be able to get back to opening small businesses, and we're going to continue helping them any way we can.
Follow-up?
Okay, my follow-up is for Minister Lecce.
Yep.
Minister, I'm curious why Ontario didn't choose to go the route of BC, which is testing school reopening with part-time and volunteer classes. Did Ontario consider this, and why did you choose not to do so?
Sorry, Laura, would you mind just repeating the testing? I missed part of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just wondering why Ontario didn't go the same route as BC, which is, you know, testing reopening in June with part-time and volunteer classes. Did Ontario consider this, and why did you choose not to?
Yeah, I think the Premier has made clear that, you know, while we are leading in testing, when it comes to our kids, we're just not going to take that chance. And when you look at the ROI in our calculation for some weeks, given the risk profile, our decision point was we're just not going to take that level of risk with our youngest learners, with our children. And so that decision point was made following advice from some of the best scientific leaders and medical leaders in Ontario, telling us that that's the right step forward. What they've also told us is that we need to prepare for a reopening. It's going to be really important for the emotional, social, and intellectual journey of these kids. They got to get back, and I know many of these children are already facing some challenge at home today. So we're preparing for that with a plan to decisively reopen with strong safety protocols in place for then. I mean, look, BC, Alberta, Nova Scotia, every province in this federation has taken a different approach in some respect. We respect the differences, the data that's informing those decision makers. But at the end of the day in Ontario, while we're making progress, we want to see more momentum. And that's why the decision today, we think, will help keep families safe, but most importantly, their children.
Last question.
Last question comes from Randy Raff from CHCH-TV. Please go ahead.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Premier. I'm wondering about the changes, some of the changes that you made to the emergency order this morning. You're going to allow churches to have church ceremonies in parking lots. What about churches that are in urban settings that don't have parking lots? Are you going to allow them to rent a parking lot off-site or something like that?
Sure. If you want to go to a parking lot, there's a lot of empty parking lots right now, and hold a church service, you know, that's fine. But I'd like to confirm that with my health table first. But right now, it's in church parking lots, and you know, people want to get out there. They want to pray, and we thought it'd be a responsible way of letting people do that, as long as they stay in their cars, they have only family members, they're distanced. Then if their pastor, their priest, or whatever religion it is, wants to get up there and say a few words, then I think that should be fine.
Okay. And my other question is about the reopening of day camps and daycare centers during phase 2. When you've got a bunch of kids that have been cooped up at home for several months, how can you possibly expect them? Is it realistic to expect kids to observe strict health protocols? Aren't they going to just start, you know, running around, wrestling each other, acting like little kids?
Well, again, this is all dependent on the health table in July and August, and we're going to have strict protocol in place to make sure that the kids are safe. Because if I don't feel they're safe, we just aren't going to bother opening them up. And it also is jurisdiction by jurisdiction, up to the local public health doctor to make that call as well. So we're going to make sure that our number one priority is to take care of the kids. And I understand what you're saying, Randy. Kids are, you know, they get excited, they want to see their friends. But if the numbers aren't there, we won't hesitate to close it down.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.